Alright, so next we have HTML forms, and when you build an HTML form, it really doesn't do anything until you add some logic to it using PHP, JavaScript, Ruby, some kind of programming language that can process a form or process post variables. So right now, all we're really going to do is build the actual HTML form. Later on in the series, when we get into the PHP and other stuff, we'll talk about processing them. Alright, so I'm going to create a new folder for this section called Chapter 1, Section 6. And I'm actually going to copy the files from the last, just because I like to use that template. We can open up index, and I can get rid of everything in between the container divs. And this will give us a clean slate. For the style, we can keep this. We can get rid of all this table stuff, and I also want to get rid of the text-align center for the container. Okay. Wait, where'd that go? Alright, we can change this heading too. Let's change this to HTML forms. Alright, so like anything else in HTML, forms have their own set of tags. So we're going to open up a form tag, and usually you would give a couple attributes here, and one would be action, and that means that when we submit a form, we submit an HTTP request, and that's usually through GET or POST. And I'm going to explain this a little more later down the line, but for now we're just going to say POST. We're not really sending any data, so it doesn't matter, but just for an example. And then we're going to want a action is where you want to send the form to. Method is going to be POST or GET. It's the method of HTTP request. Action, however, is the script or the file where you want to send the form, so we'll just say process.php, which doesn't really exist, but that would be an example of where you would send a form to a PHP script. And then let's close the form tags. Alright, now in between these form tags we can add all our fields, and there's many ways you can do this. You could use a table if you want. You could just have the text, paragraphs, but I'm going to use an unordered list for our form. So I'm going to say UL and have some list tags, and in each list tag we want to have the label of the field. So say label, say first name, label, and we can actually format this a little better, easier to read. Put them on different lines and indent them. So we have a label. We can actually put a colon right here, and then we have the input, and this is going to be just a text box input. So you want input, and usually you'd give it a name so that you could use it on the server-side programming, and it would be something like this. And we want to type. So the type is text, and then you can close it like that. So if we save this, we now have a label and an input in our form. I don't want the bullets here, so I'm going to go into my CSS file, and we're not going to need any of these. We can keep the list here. We don't need the table stuff. And for the list element, I want to get rid of that bullet, so I'm going to say list style none. Okay, so that got rid of that. Let's actually put a heading. We'll call this registration form. Okay, so what we want to do now is add another field. So I'm going to put a line break here. And we can actually copy this. We'll say last name. And if we were going to process this form, you'd want to make this last name as well. And that's also text. What else can we do? We can have email. Now, with HTML5, we have a whole bunch of new input types, and email is actually one of them. So we can change this to email, and what that does, it'll actually validate the field and make sure it's an email field, email value, without using any kind of JavaScript or anything like that. So that's really cool. And then the last thing we'll have is a message area. Oh, let me change this name. And for message, we're going to use a text area. So that's not an input tag. Text area has its own tag. And you want to give that a name. And hold on. Keyboard's acting up. And we can actually have a ending text area tag. Okay, so if we save this, okay, the form looks a little demented, but we'll fix that. We also need a submit button. So here we'll add input type equals submit, and the value will be what's written on the button. So we'll say register. Okay, so we can see that this is a little messed up here. What I'm going to do is add some styling to the labels. I'm going to give them a fixed width, okay, so that the boxes aren't ending at different or beginning at different positions here. So if we go here and we type in label, and what we want to do is say display inline block, and we want to give it a width, we'll say, of 150 pixels. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of this text align center. It's just making things look a little ugly. There we go, much better. So we'll give a little space above the register button. Alright, so that's a form. Now if we submit it, it's not going to do anything. It's going to process.php, but we obviously don't have that file, and even if we did, we're not on a web server, so it's not going to work. PHP needs a web server to run. Now I'll actually add a couple more elements, different kinds of input. Let's see, we can add let's say, I don't know, we'll say favorite food, and we'll make this a select box. So we want to say select select name equals food, and then we want to end that select tag, and in between that we want options. So option with a value, value can be pizza, and then we need to close the option, and this value equals pizza, this isn't going to display to the user. We need to put something here to display, which will just have pizza. If I copy these, we can change the value to I don't know, hamburgers, and we'll say steak. Okay, so we get the select, open tag, options, which you can have as many as you want, and then the closing select tag. You can see now we have this drop down with our values. Okay, so next thing I'll show you is, let's see, we'll do a some radio buttons. So to do that, we do input type equals radio, and we gotta give this a name, and let's just say gender, and value will equal male. Now that, once again, that value is not going to display in the browser, so we have to write what we want to display here. Okay, so that's one radio button. I'm going to do actually we don't want a line break, we want them next to each other. So we can use NBSP semicolon, which is just a space, and then we'll do the same thing. Grab this, and we'll put female. Okay, so if we reload that, whoop, not sure what happened there. Oh, male, female. Oh, I forgot the quote here for radio. And we want to put, we actually don't have a label, and we also didn't do a line break, so we need to do that. We need to have a label, gender, and then we want a line break here. Alright, so we have different kind of inputs: text, email, select, radio buttons, text area. So that's pretty much it. It's a very simple form, and later on in this series we'll be going into actually processing forms. So that's it for this section. I'll see you in the next.